An ordinary girl meets a homeless man on a snowy street and decides to let him into her home, not knowing how it will change her life. One hot shower reveals a face she had long buried in her memory. Everything she believed in collides with an impossible truth, and one act of kindness becomes the beginning of a whole world in which no one will be forgotten again. Don't forget to subscribe and like so you don't miss new stories. The snow fell slowly and solemnly, covering the streets of St. Haven with a silent blanket. Everything around seemed to freeze under its tread. The lights of the shops, the rare passers-by, the tired roofs of the wooden houses. The air was thick and transparent, like in a polar aquarium, in which every breath sounded too loud. Ellie walked along the sidewalk, pressing her scarf to her face. Her fingers in her mittens no longer felt warm, but she was still in no hurry. After a warm dinner at her parents', where it smelled of fried cinnamon and baked apples, returning to the empty apartment seemed especially cold. The car had been left in the workshop since the morning, and the buses did not run on such snow-covered streets. And she would not have waited. It was better to walk, in the snow, in the silence, than to stand under a yellow lamp at a bus stop where even dogs did not appear. "Are you sure you don't want to stay overnight?" her mother asked, adjusting her hood. "The snowstorm's just starting." "I have an early shift tomorrow," Ellie smiled. "Everything will be fine. Home is only 20 minutes away." Her father looked at her with the same expression he had when he saw her off to school on her first day, as if an old lock had clicked in her chest and released all of her father's anxiety. "On evenings like these, I remember that January when we got stuck on the highway. Remember? You were just a baby then." Ellie nodded and smiled at the corners of her lips. Yes, she remembered, but she didn't want to talk. There was a lump in her throat that wouldn't let the words out. The snow was falling harder. It fell in flakes, caught her eyelashes, rustled her hood. Ellie turned onto Clark Street, a narrow, almost deserted street where every house was like a miniature postcard from the past. The window of an old bookstore was still dimly lit, and behind the glass she could make out the silhouette of a salesman stacking books. Somewhere in the distance, children were laughing. Two brothers were chasing each other, throwing snowballs, one in a bright green jacket, the other in a red one. Ellie paused for a second, covering her mouth with her hand so as not to give away her thoughts out loud. "How you'd laugh now, James," she whispered. "You'd definitely be playing with them." As if in response to her words, the ice crunched under her foot, and her body abruptly leaned forward. She stumbled and fell to her knees with a dull, "Ah!" Something groaned beneath her. "Be careful, please." A weak, cracked voice rang out. Ellie screamed, stood up quickly, and took a step back. There was no one around. Only him. A man hidden under a layer of snow, like part of the sidewalk. He was sitting huddled against the wall of the store, covered with a thin blanket that had already turned white and become almost invisible. His face was covered by a hood. His beard was stuck together from the moisture. His hands were shaking. "Anta! Oh God! I'm sorry I didn't notice you." Ellie exhaled, moving closer. The man looked up, and there was something elusively warm in his eyes, like the light from a dying candle. "It's okay. I'm used to it. You're not the first one to step on something without looking." He tried to pull the blanket up higher, but his fingers wouldn't obey. Ellie stood there, clutching her bag, looking at him. Her heart sank. You're all alone?" "It's terribly cold here. I heard it's going to be -15 tonight." "Don't worry about me, miss. I can handle it. I already have." But then a loud rumbling sound broke the silence. His stomach made itself known too clearly. The man turned away. "Sorry," he muttered. "I didn't have time to eat dinner on time." Ellie took a step forward. "Look, I have warm food at home. I live 3 blocks away. You can just come in, eat, warm up. I work as a nurse and I can't leave you here, please." He looked at her suspiciously, as if she had offered him not food but a trap. "Why? Why do you want to help?" "Because you are human. And because I don't want to go to sleep thinking that I could have done something, but didn't." He was silent for a long time, then nodded barely noticeably. "My name is Thomas." "Ellie," she said, holding out her hand. "Come on, Thomas." They walked in silence. The snow was falling harder. The shadows of the street lamps trembled in the wind. Thomas walked with difficulty, his boots slipping, and each step felt like walking through a swamp. Ellie sometimes slowed down to wait. Her apartment was on the second floor of a brick building with green shutters. She opened the door, and a warm smell came from inside. Cinnamon, wood, and something slightly sweet. "Come in, take off your shoes. There's a towel in the bathroom, and some clothes. Left over from my brother. Will do." He didn't say anything. He just nodded and disappeared behind the door. Ellie stayed in the kitchen. She undressed and went to the stove. She put water on the soup. Carrots, celery, some potatoes. It smelled cozy, but inside everything was shaking. He's strange, she thought. And at the same time, there's something familiar about him. That look, as if I've seen him before. Somewhere before. The sound of the shower was almost soothing. It lasted a long time, but she did not rush. Let him. Let him wash as much as he wanted. When he left, Ellie was just setting out the bowls on the table. She smiled without turning around. "Thomas, the soup is ready." And only when she turned around did she see. He stood in the doorway, wearing James's clothes. His hair was combed back. His face was clean, beardless. His eyes were gray and deep. Those same eyes. She dropped her spoon. He looked at her, confused and embarrassed. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Was I in the bathroom too long?" Ellie came up slowly, touched his cheek, and burst into tears. "James," she whispered. "Oh God, you're alive." He froze, the word echoing in his chest. "What did you say?" "James, my brother, my twin. You. It's you." He took a step back. "No, it's a mistake. I'm Thomas. That's been my name for a long time." "No, you're James Grayson. You disappeared 7 years ago. A bus, a humanitarian mission. We were looking for you. I told everyone you were alive. I knew." He grabbed his head. "No, I don't remember." "Look at me," she said, looking into his eyes. "It's me, Ellie. We were born on the same day on Christmas. You always laughed that it was a gift. You wore this shirt, this bracelet, remember?" He looked at the bracelet on his wrist. Wooden beads. He made it himself. The same day as her. I saw it in a dream." His voice grew quieter. "I heard that name. James. Because it's you." She pressed herself against him, not letting go. "I found you." He hugged her, as if something inside had finally clicked into place. The room was quiet. Only the clock on the wall ticked, counting the seconds of a new life that had begun that very evening. When the snow had not just fallen, it had returned. The room smelled of steam and lavender soap. The windows were slightly fogged with warm air from the bathroom, and the streetlights flickered outside like dim lanterns in a snowy fog. Ellie stood at the kitchen table, holding her brother, as if she were afraid that if she loosened her grip, he would disappear again. Dissolve into the steam, into the smell of a freshly laundered shirt, into this incredible moment that was too good to be true. James didn't move. He looked at her with wide eyes, and there was everything in that look. Bewilderment, embarrassment, a tentative hope. He didn't push her away. He just stood there as her tears dripped onto his shoulder, his hands limp and hesitant at first, suddenly closing around her back. "I don't understand," he whispered. "Ellie, are you sure?" "I'm sure," she said, her voice shaking. "I've never been so sure of anything." They were silent. Time stood still. Only the soup was bubbling quietly in the pot on the stove, releasing the aroma of caraway and celery root into the air. Somewhere in the neighboring apartment, an old jazz record began to play. The melody sounded muffled, as if from a distant memory. James pulled away, not abruptly, but with a kind of childish awkwardness. He went to the mirror above the fireplace. He looked closely at his reflection, as if he were seeing it for the first time. "I often didn't recognize myself," he said quietly. "There are no mirrors on the streets. And if there were, I turned away. Who wants to look at a face covered in gray hair, dirt, and other people's eyes?" Ellie came closer and stood next to him. "Now look," she said. "It's you, James, my brother, the missing one, alive. I don't remember anything. Your name rings like a bell in a dream. I didn't know I had a sister. I didn't even know who I was. They gave me a name on the street, Thomas. An old man said it sounded noble. I didn't mind. It was all the same. I ate from garbage cans, slept in basements, frozen bus stops. I didn't know anyone was looking for me. I never stopped, Ellie whispered, all these years. At first, my mom and dad and I hired private detectives, called every phone call, asked at hospitals. Then they gave in, but I didn't, because I felt it. Somewhere in my chest, there was a thought. You're not dead. I couldn't shut it out, even when everything said otherwise. James sat down slowly in the chair by the window. Outside the glass, the snow was still falling, as if it had no intention of stopping. He looked at the drifts with the air of a man accustomed to seeing them on the other side of the glass. The bus, he said suddenly. I remember the bus. Ellie froze. Tell. Whilst we were driving, I had a backpack. I was sitting by the window. Then, a scream, a crash, white light. I flew out the window. Wind, snow. I was rolling down. Then darkness. And then there was the forest, and I didn't know who I was. Only that. Then some fishermen picked me up. I couldn't speak. He gave me water. Then he disappeared. I walked along the river. I walked for weeks. Then the city and the streets. And that's it. It all fits, she whispered. It all fits. The bus went down on a curve in the canyon, slid off the icy road. The driver died. Your body was never found. They thought you drowned. We buried an empty coffin. James looked up. Sorry. Ellie sat down next to him and took his hand. For what? For making you suffer. For not remembering. No, it's not your fault. You survived. And now you're here. That's what I'm grateful for. They sat in silence. The clock ticked. The soup was getting cold, but no one cared. Then James spoke again, more confidently. What about Mom and Dad? Alive, old, moved out of town. We have a little house on the lake. You have to see them. They will cry. A lot, but they are waiting for you, even if they didn't believe anymore. I'm afraid. What? That they don't recognize me, that I'm not the same as they remember me. You are you, even if something has changed in you. But you are alive, and that is the most important thing. He pressed her hand to his cheek. Thank you for not passing by. I couldn't. Something inside me sank. I saw you and it was as if my heart knew. Is this fate? He asked. Maybe, or maybe just love, the one that never dies. The evening slowly turned into night. The light from the lanterns became dim. Ellie got up and went to the kitchen. Let's have dinner anyway. I can't talk on an empty stomach, and I'm sure you can't either. James smiled for the first time. It was awkward, but warm. He sat down at the table, carefully placing his napkin on his lap, as if to show that he could still be human. I don't even remember the last time I ate at the table. Then it's time to remember. They ate slowly. The carrots were sweet, the bread was crunchy, and the wine, cheap red, left over from the holidays, warmed their throats. You know, he said, I've seen so many faces over the years. Some passed by, some laughed, some pitied, but no one invited me home. Ellie looked at him as if he were a miracle. And I found it, because home is not walls. It is when someone is waiting for you, even if you don't know who you are. James looked down. I want to know everything about us, about myself, about who I was, who we were. We were inseparable, she said. You were studying to be a nurse. You wanted to go to Africa. We dreamed of opening an orphanage. You had a guitar and a silly habit of singing in the bathroom. He chuckled. Did I really sing in the bathroom? Yes. And he was terribly out of tune. They laughed, and it was James's first laugh in 7 years. The snow continued to fall outside. But inside the apartment it was warm. Not from the radiators, from what had happened between them. Ellie collected the dishes. Let's go. I'll make your bed in James's room. In your room. It's the same. Even the books on the shelf. He followed her, silently stepping across the carpet. The room was small. An old chair, a desk, a bed with a blue blanket. Everything looked as if someone had just gone out for a minute and would soon return. Did I live here? Yes. He ran his hand along the back of the chair. Shuri, it all seems like a dream. Tomorrow we will start remembering. We will go to our parents, and I will show you the albums. And your old bike. You will see that life did not end. It was just waiting. He nodded. Thank you, Ellie, for everything. Good night, James. Good night, sister. She closed the door behind her, and he lay down without undressing on the blanket. He lay there looking at the ceiling, and he thought, how strange. When the snow falls, it seems that everything around slows down. But in fact, that's when life suddenly returns. The morning came without the sun, gray, muted. It spread across the streets of St. Haven like a thick fog, in which the outlines of houses frozen under the icy crust of the night's frost were lost. Patterns spread across the glass of James's bedroom like a thin lace web, as if the air itself had decided to draw something forgotten and personal. He woke to a feeling of peace that at first frightened him with its unfamiliarity. No dampness, no clatter of garbage cans, no cries of sparrows scurrying around the gateways in search of crumbs. Only silence and the aroma of coffee seeping from under the door. He lay motionless, staring at the ceiling. His mind touched fragments of dreams, a girl's voice, a white sky, a tap on the glass. The memory was still fragile, like a fogged mirror on which someone runs a finger, leaving only a blurry trace. But now he knew. He was in that mirror. Anna, James, are you awake? A voice came from the kitchen. I made coffee and toast. With honey. Remember, you liked honey? He stood up, pulled on a sweater that still smelled of lavender, and walked out into the hallway. The kitchen was cozy. A checkered tablecloth, 2 mugs, a steaming teapot, and a plate of crispy toasted slices. Good morning, he muttered. Good morning, Ellie smiled. How did you sleep? Too good to be true. She placed a mug in front of him. Erie, today you will see your parents. If you are ready, of course. He thought about it. His heart was beating louder. The thought of a meeting that had been impossible for so many years now suddenly seemed too fast. I don't know what to say. I don't even know who I am. There's emptiness in my head, and fear. It doesn't matter. They will know you. You are their son. They loved you every winter, every day. Even when it seemed that there was no hope left. He took a sip. The coffee was strong, scalding. Tell me what I was like. Ellie looked at him carefully. Then she stood up, went to the shelf by the window and took out an old photo album wrapped in green cloth. There you are, 9 years old, in a bear costume. It was a school play, and you were mad that you weren't the lead. He leaned over the photo. A bright-eyed, fair-haired boy stood against a backdrop of fir trees, holding a cardboard staff. And here, this is our graduation. You said then that you would definitely go to college and go where people need help. You wanted to become a nurse because you believed that hands can not only hold a weapon, but also save. He was silent. He looked at the page for a long time, then carefully ran his finger over the photograph. I feel that this boy is me, but as if from another world. It's okay, Ellie said softly. Amnesia isn't the absence of life. It's just a veil, sometimes thin, sometimes thick. But underneath it, there's you, the real you. He closed the album. He stood up and looked at her. I'm ready, let's go. They barely spoke on the way. The car rolled along the snowy roads like a boat on a crystal lake. The fir trees along the highway stood in silent guard. James looked out the window and saw his city, not as he remembered it, but as if for the first time. He tried to recognize something in the bends of the streets, in the signs, in the red doors of the pharmacies, but everything was as if in a fog. Do they live in the same house? He asked. Yes, on the lakeshore. After you disappeared, my father left work. My mother was sick a lot. They didn't want to leave. They hoped you would come back. Everything there remained almost the same. The house stood among the pines, wooden with a veranda, the windows of which glowed with a soft amber light. Smoke rose from the chimney. The snow around was untouched, only the tracks of a fox at the gate. Wait, James whispered. I need a little time. Okay, I'll say we're here. She got out of the car and went to the door. She knocked. The door was opened by a woman with gray hair tied in a bun. She was wearing a wool cardigan and holding knitted mittens in her hands. "Mom," Ellie said, "I need to show you something." "I already heard that you had arrived. Who is that with you?" the woman asked, looking behind her daughter's back. Ellie took a step to the side. James got out of the car. He walked slowly, like a man afraid to make a wrong move. "Hi, Mom," he said. The woman turned pale. The mittens fell from her hands. "No, no, it's impossible," she whispered. James came closer. He stopped at the threshold. She looked at him as if he were a ghost, then touched his face with trembling fingers. "James? Is that you?" "Sorry to keep you waiting," he said, and she, unable to bear it, collapsed on his chest, sobbing. Her father appeared behind her, tall, stern, with gray hair at his temples. His eyes widened. He grabbed the doorframe. Dear God, son. And only then did James realize how much they had been waiting for him and what it felt like to be found. The house was warm, but it wasn't the usual warmth from radiators and blankets. It was something else, something elusive, like the warmth of old letters or photographs that had been lying in a box for decades. James's return seemed to awaken the walls, the books on the shelves, the curtains swaying in the wind. It seemed that everything, from the armchairs to the dusty frames with family portraits, froze in trepidation, as if the house knew that all this time it had not been full. After the first hugs, tears, and silence filled only with hearts, his mother led James into the kitchen. With shaking hands, she poured tea into the chipped cup he had drunk from as a young man. "I'm sorry there's nothing tasty," she whispered. "I wasn't prepared. I didn't know." "No, Mom," James said softly. "Just sitting next to me is too much." The father stood by the window, holding on to the sill as if he was afraid of falling. He didn't say a word, just looked at his son, sometimes lowering his eyes, sometimes raising them again. "I thought I had nothing more to look forward to," he said finally. "I buried you in my thoughts every night, and you're alive, in front of me, and I don't know what to do with it." "I don't know either, Dad," James admitted. "It all feels like a dream. I wake up and I'm afraid it'll all disappear." His father came up to him and hugged him tightly, without words, like a man not used to showing emotions, but now broken and free at the same time. Then the three of them sat at the table drinking tea. His mother held James's hand, as if she were afraid he would disappear if her fingers weakened. "Tell us, son," she asked, "everything you remember." He began to speak, at first hesitantly in fragments. Then the words began to flow, about the river, the forest, the cellars, the people on the street. The old man named Soul who had given him his name, the nights under the bridges, the first dreams in which faces came that seemed familiar but blurred, like chalk on water. "I was a nobody," he said. "I didn't know my name. I was afraid to look people in the eye. I thought I was only worthy of scraps, of corners. But someone always shared a piece of bread. Someone gave me an old jacket, and I held on to that." The mother cried quietly. The father lowered his head, covering his face with his hands. "We've lost so much," he whispered, "but you're alive, which means we can start over." After lunch, Ellie took James to his old room. Everything was the same as before. A shelf with encyclopedias, an aquarium without water, a t-shirt with the college logo on the back of a chair. "There's something you need to know," she said. "I made an appointment for you to see a doctor at Bloomfield Medical Center, a specialist in post-traumatic amnesia. We'll go tomorrow. We need to see what can be restored." He nodded, his eyes showing both agreement and concern. "I'm afraid to find out that I won't remember anything," he said. "But not to try means to lose the chance. We will be there. Always." He barely slept all night. In his dreams there were faces, blurred, childish, bright. He heard his father's voice calling him by name. He smelled the rain. He woke up at dawn. It was still dark in the room, but his heart was beating differently. The hospital smelled clean and chlorine. The doctor's office was bright, with pictures of forests on the walls and a chair in which James sat, clutching the armrests. "My name is Dr. Mason," said the doctor, an older man with a kind face. "We will talk calmly. We will do nothing without your consent. Just tell me how you feel." James was telling the story. The doctor was writing it down. Sometimes he nodded. Sometimes he asked questions. Then he suggested taking a test. Images, sounds, smells. When the bottle of lavender oil was brought, James flinched. It's, it's something familiar, like a room, curtains, a letter. Okay, the doctor said. That's the first step. Memory is not a door that can be forced open. It's a garden where everything is still growing. Sometimes it takes time for a bud to blossom. On the way out, Ellie held his hand. Everything will work out, she said. I believe you. And the doctor also said that we need to awaken the memory with music, smells, places. We'll start with the simplest. That evening they went to the lakeshore, where they used to walk in the summer. The wind was sharp, the snow crunched underfoot. But there was something familiar in the air. You gave me a ride on your bike here, Ellie said. And then we both dove into the water. You lost your watch, remember? He closed his eyes. And suddenly, a flash. Water. Cold. Laughter. The smell of pine. And a girl with pigtails laughing nearby. He opened his eyes. I remember. What? How you screamed that I would swim until the morning until I found your glasses. And then you pulled them out of your pocket and said that it was a test. Ellie laughed and cried at the same time. You're coming back. He looked at the lake. The first star flared up in the sky, and everything around seemed to become a little brighter. I never left, Ellie, he whispered. I just lost my way. And now we will find her together. Winter retreated slowly and reluctantly, like a stubborn guard who did not want to leave his post. The wind still whispered through the crowns of the fir trees. The snow did not melt, but only became denser, blue in the mornings and crunchy underfoot. But there was already something different in the air. Warm, almost imperceptible, like a promise. James now woke up with the feeling of returning from afar, from a journey without a map, in which the road back finally appeared. He began to get up early again, shave in front of the mirror, brewing himself coffee, as his father taught him. Reading photo albums no longer caused fear. On the contrary, he caught himself recognizing facial expressions, gestures, even jokes left in the margins of old notebooks. Have you always been this punctual? Ellie asked one morning, seeing him dressed half an hour before going out. I'm not sure, James chuckled, but I want to be on time today. They were driving to the shelter, the same one where Ellie worked as a nurse twice a week. It was modest, built on donations, with low ceilings, orange walls, and the smell of onions that always lingered in the kitchen. James was hesitant at first, returning to the homeless community, now as a guest, as someone from the other side, felt almost like a betrayal. But Ellie insisted. You are not a guest. You are part of this world. You can understand them in a way that no one else can. What if someone recognizes me? He asked quietly. What if someone I shared bread with sees me clean, in a new jacket? Then you will look into his eyes and say, I am here, and I remember, and I am with you. When they entered the building, the air was thick with voices, coughs, the quiet clatter of dishes. Someone was laughing at the clothes stand. Someone was falling asleep in a chair under a blanket. James froze at the threshold. Everything is the same, he said. The smell, the light, even the lamp at the entrance that flickers. Have you been here? He nodded. Several times. They only let me in on Fridays. I slept by the radiator. I had black boots then, one without laces. I called them a pair for those in a hurry. She laughed, but the laughter quickly turned into a soft smile. You haven't forgotten. Memory is returning, James. In one of the chairs by the window sat an elderly man with a gray beard, wrapped in a blanket. He looked up. Then he squinted. Hey, wait, you're Thomas, right? His voice trembled. James came closer. Recognized. Saul, the one who gave him his name. Hello, Saul. The old man slowly stood up, came close, quietly touched his cheek as his mother did. You're alive. I thought you froze to death that night. We waited for you at the old warehouse. Then we heard that you were found on the corner of 9th Street, but no one knew for sure. It's been a long walk, James said, but I'm here. Saul nodded and suddenly hugged him tightly. I knew you weren't the type to give up. I knew it. Are you okay now? Yes, now yes. James spent the entire day at the shelter. He served soup, sorted through boxes of clothes, talked. People reached out to him. Someone said, "You look familiar." Someone else, "You have kind eyes." He didn't reveal himself. He was just there. "I can't leave here again," he told Ellie on the way home. "I don't want to. I want to stay." Staying is one thing. But you want to build something. I see it in you. You are looking for meaning. I want them to have a place, not for one night, but for a lifetime. Maybe small, but warm, where there will be not just walls, but a name, where people will not feel temporary. "You sound like the James I remember," she said, "the one who dreamed of building houses in the desert. You come back, every day." In the evening he sat by the window, a notebook in his hands. On the first page he wrote, "The place where the return begins." "What shall we call him?" he asked his sister. "Something simple, warm, without pathos. The warehouse, the one where I once slept between boxes. It was the warmest morning of my life. Let it be the warehouse of warmth." Ellie nodded, not hiding her tears. "And let there always be room for one more." The night in St. Haven was clear and ringing, as if someone had washed the sky until it squeaked and scattered a handful of thin silver dots across it. The lanterns by the houses burned softly, like the breath of a candle, and the snow, long compacted, shone blue like icy glass. James sat on the roof of the house where Ellie lived, wrapped in a blanket. He did not sleep. Not because he could not, but because he did not want to. These hours were special now, not anxious as before, not tormenting, but warm, real. He listened to the city like a man returning from a long deafness, and every sound, the barking of a dog, the crunch of snow under someone's steps, a distant knock on the door of the entrance, seemed to him confirmation that he was alive again. "You're not sleeping again." Ellie's voice came from behind him. He turned around and smiled. She came over and sat down next to him. "Have you ever liked silence?" he asked. "Only the one that doesn't scare. And it used to scare me, because there was no one in it. No faces, no voices. Just me. And now it's you. Parents. Home. And I'm not afraid anymore. Because you came back. Not even completely, not even in everything. But you are here. And that is the main thing." He was silent. Then he said, "I want to start building, not metaphorically, a real shelter, so that people know. This is not for one night, so that they have an address, so that they have a morning. Are you ready for this?" "Ready. It's not dark inside me anymore. It's getting lighter, and it's getting brighter every day." A week later, he went to the city hall. The paperwork, the bureaucracy, the cold corridors, and the indifferent faces. None of this was scary anymore. He knew why he had come. He was met by Mr. Harper, a short man in glasses with gray temples and a surprisingly soft voice. "You want to open a shelter?" he asked. "Are you James Grayson?" "Yes. Once I was nobody, and now I want others not to go through this. I don't just want to give them a roof. I want to give them face." Harper studied him for a long time. Then he put the papers down and said, "I have seen many and heard many speeches, but in your eyes there is no desire to become famous. Only pain turned into work. This is more valuable than any formality. I will help you, but it will not be easy." "I'm not interested in the simple anymore," James replied. They found the building 2 months later, an old warehouse on the outskirts, stone walls, a high ceiling, the smell of dust and iron. When he walked in for the first time, Sul was with him. The old man walked slowly but with dignity. "It's nice here," he said. "It will be warm here. I can feel it. Do you think we can handle it?" "I think you've already done it. All that's left is to make it visible." In the evenings, they cleaned the walls, took out the trash, and repaired the wiring with the help of volunteers. James worked silently, but there was a fire in his eyes. He was back to who he had been before everything, only deeper, stronger. One evening, a guy approached them, young, with a backpack and chapped lips. "Is this a shelter?" he asked. "Almost," James replied. "But if you're looking for a place to rest, come in." The guy stood on the threshold, hesitating. I I just wanted to warm up." "It's not just warm here. They're waiting for you here." "And who are you?" "Just a man who once stood on the threshold." The guy came in. He threw off his backpack. He sat down on an old bench. My name is Noah. And I'm James. You don't look like you're homeless. And who said that the memory of the streets disappears? It simply becomes wings. From then on, new ones came. Every week. Some for a day, some forever. And they all had their own story. But in each one there was one note: the thirst to be noticed. The opening was set for late February. James wrote the sign himself. Warehouse of Heat. The letters were uneven, but alive. As he hammered the last nail, Ellie stood below and smiled. You didn't build a building. You built a house, she said. Home is not the walls. It is when someone believes in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. Dozens of people came to the opening. Those who once slept on benches. Those who were forgotten. Those who were looking for a way. James came out to them, stood in front of the crowd, was silent. Then he said, I was among you. I was nobody. But one day someone said to me, let's go home. And that changed everything. Today I say it to you. Welcome home. Spring had come quietly, almost unnoticed, as if it did not want to disturb the silence that winter had left behind. There was no longer the bitterness of cold in the air, and instead of an icy ringing, the soft smells of damp earth, first buds, and wet asphalt crept through the streets of St. Haven. The snow melted slowly, reluctantly, leaving behind thin streams that flowed along the curbs, like traces of someone's footsteps into the past. James woke up earlier than usual. The sun was just beginning to rise, making its way through the blinds in his room, and the light fell on the walls in thin stripes, as if someone had carefully cut the morning. He sat on the edge of the bed, ran his hand over his forehead, looked at his palms. They were warm, alive. He felt them. Not like then, on the street, when his fingers seemed alien, but like now, like a part of someone who knows that he is. Light footsteps were heard in the corridor. Ellie, as always, was walking barefoot, without turning on the light. Are you awake too? He asked, meeting her gaze in the kitchen arch. I just don't want this day to start without me, she smiled. Today is special. Yes, today it really opens. And are you ready? Ready. Probably for the first time in my life. I'll make some toast, she said. And honey, you love it again now, don't you? He laughed, nodded, and sat down at the table. The kitchen was homey. A light smell of coffee, wooden chairs with worn backs, a sign that said morning begins here, given to him by his mother. Everything was filled with peace, and that special light that only happens at the beginning of something new. After breakfast, they went out. The wind was fresh, but no longer biting. The people on the streets looked different, wearing coats instead of down jackets, with their faces open instead of hidden behind scarves. The smell of bakeries hung in the city center, and the spring shop windows haggled with passers-by for their glances. But James was no longer interested in shop windows. His way lay to the warehouse of heat. The building had a different look now. Its walls were painted a warm sandy color. The same sign hung above the door, and the windows were lit with lamps like the lights of a street party. People had already gathered on the porch. Some held flowers. Some held signs of gratitude. Among them was Saul, standing at the railing with a wooden cane. James, he called, look at all these faces. We're all here because of you. No, Saul, James replied. You're here for yourself. I was just the one who opened the door. He walked up the steps. His heart felt surprisingly light, as if everything that had been dragging him down had finally let go. Inside the room was a spacious hall covered with soft carpets, chairs against the wall, a lounge, a library with books brought by volunteers. Above the fireplace hung a frame with the inscription, Home is not an address, but a feeling that you are needed. There was silence when everyone entered. James stepped forward, holding no paper or notes in his hands, just his gaze clear and open. I have not prepared a speech, he said, because it is in my heart. For a long time, I was the one who kept silent. For a long time, I thought that I was gone. But one day, someone extended a hand to me, simply without conditions, and said, let's go home. Today, I repeat these words to you. For some of you, this may be your first night under a roof. For others, your first night without fear. For others, just soup and a blanket. But please know, you are welcome here. Not because you are in need, but because you are important. Because you are alive. Because each of you is not a mistake, but a story. And this story is welcome here. He fell silent, and in the silence there was applause. Not loud, not formal, but real. Someone stood up. Someone cried. Ellie stood at the end of the hall, clutching her heart. In her eyes shone that very feeling that cannot be called anything other than happiness. After the ceremony, he went to the window. From the street, you could see a boy of about 8 holding his father's hand and looking at the building. "Dad," he said, "is it true that you can stay here forever now?" "Yes, son," the man replied. "If you want, they will accept you." James closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Ellie. Thank you for not passing by then." She came up to him and hugged him by the shoulders. "I just heard my heart, and now others hear you." "You know," he said quietly, "I often thought that I was dying then, in the snow. But maybe that wasn't the end. It was the beginning, because only by falling did I learn to lift others up. And now you have risen up yourself and given strength to others." He looked at the sign. "Home. That's the miracle, right?" "No," she answered. "The miracle is you." Outside the window, spring was laughing in the puddles, and the sky was clear, as if it wanted to see how a person considered lost becomes a beginning for others. And in this morning, in this breath of hope, there was no more pain, only light, only life, only home.